All right. Clayton and I are going to take the opportunity to take a swipe at the mainstream media, not just because we both are former media journalists in New York City, but because we think it is merited, because the Western media does not want peace. And that became clear. It becomes clearer every day, but it was abundantly clear this weekend in this 60 Minutes piece we're going to talk about. Of course, we as news consumers should know that we are being stoked into supporting war, but it's easy to forget when they frame it as such big, nice love affair pieces, such as the one they did this weekend with Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska. Now, I have no major beef about Olena Zelenska. I think she's really beautiful and she's classy, well-spoken, but I did find it hard to watch, especially because when we were in journalism school, 60 Minutes was held up as this bastion of real journalism. It was like must-watch journalistic pieces. We were even quizzed about 60 Minutes pieces, right? And Mike Wallace was like a champion for chasing down people and standing up to global politicians. But research tells us that the most mainstream outlets are not motivated to promote peace. They simply just do not do that. In fact, research shows that in the weeks after the invasion of Iraq, only 10% of mainstream media segments were critical of that invasion, 10%. And we know how that went, right? This was on ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox, PBS, all of them.
Right.
I would say now, even though we don't have this content analysis yet, I would say 10% is generous. We showed you in the previous segment someone who was talking about peace and they cut him off, right? Elon Musk is now a persona non grata for this very reason. I don't feel like the media is giving any airtime to peaceful voices or people who are even critical of the conflict in Ukraine.
No, they're not. I mean, well, you have like generals who are on the air. You have like, we're going to go down to 4-star general who's going to tell us about why we need to launch a nuclear attack first before they get to do it. Like everybody they're turning to is, I mean, we saw General David Petraeus, we featured here on the show the other day, David Petraeus, who was basically spouting lies and saying how the West needs to continue to funnel more money and we need to strike first. We need to be the ones to strike first.
And in fact, mainstream media has been caught giving people titles as they come on the air saying this person is an ex so-and-so for the CIA or whatever, when they are currently weapons makers or investors in weapons companies, right? So we know what's going on here. And that's why you see that there is an agenda when they do these kind of things, promoting conflict in Ukraine. Now, the piece starts out by saying that Zelenska was not a very public figure until the conflict began, but take a look at this. Now, I'm going to have to just show you this with subtitles because 60 Minutes doesn't allow other content creators to use their videos. But this is from the 60 Minutes YouTube channel, and I screenshot it so you know that I'm telling you is true. So Zelensky said that weeks later, after the conflict began, he deployed his wife like a weapon. I really don't like the way that he thought. This is Scott Pelley dictating as if that's a good thing. Like, well, she's pretty and she's got some media training. Let's drag her out and this will help, garner sympathy for our side. I guess all's fair in love and war. And she is the confluence of both. He loves her. He's at war. Fair enough. But at the same time, 60 Minutes talks about how in July, she became the first lady to come to Washington and address the U.S. Congress. In that address, we've seen it. She asked for weapons in this speech to protect her home. She goes on to say that when school began this September in Ukraine, now most schools are teaching the first lesson is where's the bomb shelter, right? But then when she's asked about negotiation, she reiterates, she says this, and by the way, there's this idea of giving up some territory in some kind of negotiation. She says, these are our people and we cannot leave them there and we would never do that. And when he pushes her and says, so you're saying there will never be peace agreements or peace talks? And she says, well, I shouldn't really do politics, but I'm saying these are our people and we won't let this go. He doesn't say why did they vote to leave then Ukraine? Or what of this vote? He does not push her on that. He just lets her say it, right?
Right. He doesn't push her and doesn't feature journalists or journalism from that region. Maybe it would have been, here's what 60 Minutes would have done maybe years ago. They would have, well, we thought that was interesting that she said that. So we went to the Donbass to find out, what do the people of the Donbass actually feel about the Zelensky regime?
Or is there a leader there who has a pretty wife that we can ask?
Maybe ask the people, right? Like Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Beeley and other journalists have asked people who, Wyatt Reed and others who are actually in that region interviewing people when they voted. And people overwhelmingly were saying they've been waiting this for 8 years. They wanted to get away from this corrupt government, right? Maybe they could have done that as part of the piece. Did they? Did 60 Minutes do that? They just kept fawning over her the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
He continues, Scott Pelley, to show her photos of locations around the United States where people are displaying Ukrainian flags in very public ways. So San Francisco, Florida, New York. I found this to be a really shocking display of government-led favoritism that I really couldn't digest. And I don't know why, because I'm not a super emotional person, but I got really choked up to think about all of the people who are dying in wars that will not be spoken for while we do these kinds of things.
So let's just to be clear, Scott Pelley is sitting there and he pulls up on a monitor to show her.
No, he has printed photographs.
Oh, okay.
Old school style.
So he has printed photos that CBS printed out. And he's like, oh, I want you to see how important what you're doing is to the world. I've printed out photos showing you San Francisco. Here's a photo of a Ukrainian flag hanging in the square in San Francisco. Here's another one. This one's in Tennessee. Here's this one in Florida. And you're having an amazing, like.
So he's subliminally telling you, the viewer, American viewer, you support this. We are showing her what you support, and I'm telling you, you support it, right?
Right. So, and to your point, well, Wyden's, maybe next week Scott will do a separate piece where he goes and meets with, other world leaders and shows the support that the United States has, which runs contrary to the Western media narratives about those countries, right? Maybe he goes to Armenia next. And he shows how Americans support Armenia against the Azerbaijani genocide. Or goes to Yemen or Somalia, or these are the people. Americans are putting up Somali flags because of American aggression.
I tried to go around with my iPhone and snap some Somali flags in grocery stores and crickets, and there weren't any. In fact, neither 60 Minutes nor Congress have welcomed first ladies from other war-torn places. This is not the first or the bloodiest conflict in recent history. In fact, in graduate school, I read a study that showed that 60 Minutes had increased its percentage of celebrity profiles since the 1990s. Like, it used to be maybe one per season, and then it started to be like one per month. And that continues to happen, right? This Zelenska piece could be considered just as much a celebrity piece as a political event story.
Right. This is like a Barbara Walters interview. Like, that's what it reminds me of.
Yes.
Like Barbara Walters special, like where I'm going to interview Sylvester Stallone and the First Lady of Ukraine.
I did find an archive of 60 Minutes segments since the show began in 1968, and I did not find any other pieces on First Ladies from war-torn countries that could help promote an understanding. So how about we introduce you to a few? This I want to introduce you to is Asma al-Assad. She is the wife of Bashar al-Assad. She is Syrian, but she was born and raised in London, and she had a career in investment banking. She is, in my opinion, this is very subjective, every bit as beautiful as Olena Zelenska. She and her husband have 3 children. The West won't put her on 60 Minutes. In fact, the West pulled her off of Vogue magazine when Vogue did this actually flattering profile of her in 2012. It was pulled from shelves because at the time the West was trying to justify its invasion of Syria and sell us a bill of goods about the Assad regime. And Vogue was chastised, they were excoriated actually, for doing a nice story about her. And it was pulled from shelves and it was pulled online. Now the Guardian reports that she may lose her British passport and that she is under investigation for speaking on behalf of the Assad government, which the West continues to tell us commits crimes against its people, even though we've talked about this many times. You can see the difference here, right? Between her and Olena Zelenska is that the West wants to take down Assad in order to take Syria's oil, but the West wants to prop up Zelensky in order to use his country as a launch pad. So punish one pretty wife and promote the other, right?
I love the double standards. Yeah, exactly that. So in any of the countries where we are trying to foment regime change, we won't feature the first lady.
But even in places where, for instance, the West is supporting conflict in Ethiopia from the prime minister there, right? So here's another example of a first lady they could put on 60 Minutes. Her name is Zinash Tayashu. As you know, Ethiopia is engaged in a very bloody conflict. It has raged longer and bloodier than the current one in Ukraine. She was a gospel singer. She lived in exile in Colorado previously, so presumably she speaks good English. Her husband is a Nobel Prize winner, and he is involved in a tribal war that is, in fact, on the side of the West. So maybe a 60 Minutes piece on her is forthcoming. We'll wait.
Yeah, I'll wait with bated breath on that. I'm sure they'll stick this one in between, like maybe doing a Lady Gaga profile.
Yeah, I mean, I could keep going, right? The Yemen, who's the first lady there? Can we, Somalia? Yeah, but these are just a few.
That's fascinating.
So,
but that Vogue piece was really fab because remember, the reason I think that that's interesting is because Vogue did a whole photo shoot with Zelensky and Olena Zelenska, and it was fawning. Like it was the cameras and all of it. And what's her name? The famous photographer came.
Annie Leibovitz.
I think Annie Leibovitz came and they took photos and they had her like in a bunker and he's wearing his green shirt and she's looking, and it was amazing because I didn't even know that there was another photo shoot like this that was totally censored and blocked.
Yeah.
From the First Lady of Syria. So just an amazing tale of double standards and hypocrisy.
All right. So we're going to give you this little teaser. I mentioned at the top of the show that this is my 1 year anniversary of being on this show. And in 1 year, I have learned you don't like it when I do long segments about Trump lawsuit, but this one is a good one. So just hold on. Speaking of the media being garbage, there is someone who agrees with that, and that someone is Donald J. Trump. He filed a lawsuit against CNN on Monday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida. You'd think that guy had enough of lawsuits on his hands, but I guess he's got the bandwidth for one more. Bring it on, right? Let it rain. He is seeking $75,000 in compensatory damages from CNN and $475,000 in punitive damages, as well as a trial by jury and all legal fees, because he claims that CNN set out to remove him from office, published false things even when they knew they were false, and continued to do those things. The suit mentions one CNN anchor, not by name, but he says one of them went on the air and said, "Look what we did. We got Trump out. I'm 100% going to say it. And I 100% believe that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have got voted out."
So now I see in all of the reporting I've seen on this, it's not 100,000, 475,000. It's 475 million is the lawsuit.
Okay.
Because I was like, why waste your time with 75,000?
That's what I thought too. Let me go back. Excuse me if I misquoted. Do you have more to say about this it's on the last page? Oh, you're right. There are 3 zeros that I missed. It is 475 million in punitive damages and 75,000 in compensatory damages. Now, of course, the aim of a media outlet should not be to get any politician out. Right. We can all agree about that. And the suit goes on to talk about the network's constant comparison of Trump to Hitler, constant pushing of the Russian lackey narrative, constant use of this big lie, right? Even when current head Chris Litch told anchors stop talking about the big lie, they kept doing that. But I see a couple problems with this suit. One is that he claims that it was CNN that damaged him to an extent that he lost the presidency because they have such far reach. That is one thing that's hard to prove. Was it really CNN that damaged him, since they have lower viewership than ever before? Can he really prove that caused harm? And of course, the bar for defamation trials of public figures is really hard to prove because there are different standards for defamation of public figures versus private figures. So that could be a problem. But maybe he doesn't even care about winning. Maybe he just wants CNN to have to produce all of this documentation about how they have covered Trump in recent years. And you better believe there would be a lot. And most likely it would be very damaging. So the rest of us can sort of watch, sort of pop some popcorn and watch. That's how I feel about it. We can't sue the news networks for, pushing our world towards war and destruction. All we can do is just turn it off.
No, I would love to see what they uncover from this, from this defamation suit. So yeah, this will be interesting to see. And of course, I thought about this Project Veritas stuff, and like I did a search in the news in the lawsuit, and I couldn't find.
No, it's not mentioned there.
It's not mentioned. Of course, Project Veritas like uncovered a whole bunch of chicanery at CNN, did their whole big expose on it. So I was wondering if that was sort of the impetus for this Trump lawsuit, the stuff that Project Veritas had uncovered about CNN.
It doesn't seem to be a big impetus for that. He points out things that are double standards. For instance, when Stacey Abrams challenged certain results of elections, they don't, push the same narrative on her as they do on him. But is that illegal? Is that something you can get compensation for? It's hard to say, but it, again, is a bit fun to watch.
Yeah, it is.